Okay, thanks, Clodagh. And now I think word from the man himself.
Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for coming along. I think I need to say a word of thanks to quite a number of people. Obviously to my own family, Grania, my wife, my children, Emmett and Hannah, to my father, who's here this evening, and to my sisters, Fiona and Colette, and Colette's husband, who Kevin kindly did the show for this evening. But also a thank you as well, friends, colleagues, and guests, for coming along to support us on the day that's in it. As Michael said, it is an historic occasion. I'm sure on the day that's in it, some of you might have just thought about keep going to the airport and buy a one-way ticket to anywhere else. But I think there's reasons to stay put. I also especially need to thank Clodagh and her colleagues in the here, Mary as well, Mary Stevens especially for inspiring me to keep going and go ahead with the book. But to really thank them for all the support in developing the concept of the book and helping bring it to fruition. I do especially want to thank Liam Sheehan for accommodating my request to launch the book here in the GPO. I'm sure you'll agree it's an august location in which to do so. And I especially want to thank Liam's colleague Anna McHugh from Unpost for her fantastic support actually in making this event happen, so I really appreciate that. I suppose what I should also say is that another reason I'm just delighted to be here is that I used to work here. In fact, 21 years ago to the day, I left here to set up a more research Hindi Centre Ireland as it was back then. So I kind of feel I'm a bit of an alumnus of Unpost in that regard, and I'm always delighted to be back here. And you know, when I first started working here in 1988. Just coming to the GPO and to the building and knowing what it all meant, I always found that especially inspiring. And I suppose I should also note and thank Liam for the support he gave when I was writing the book, particularly for hosting a number of meetings that took place here in the GPO. We had a thing called the 2016 Club, and there were a few of us. Members included Liam and Michael, a few other people as well, Barry Fitzpatrick, Tom Trainer, and Damien Devaney and Paul Cook. And we kind of debated a lot of the issues. Now, we all had in common the fact that we're all kind of middle-aged men, but also the fact that we had children, I think, was also one of the reasons why we kind of thought this was important. And they gave me lots of feedback and advice. That was really, really, really helpful, so I want to thank all of them. But I suppose, as I said, you know, it's a dark day in Ireland's history, in our economic history. Black Thursday, I think somebody has called it. And there's no doubt we've reached an incredibly low point as a nation, especially in relation to the economy, and even in relation to our political leadership. But I think the low point that we're at goes beyond just economics and politics. Right now, I think there's a shortage of hope and a surfeit of pessimism. And when people look to the future from GPO or anywhere else in Ireland, they do so through a prism of fear and despair. There is a severe shortage of optimism right now. Now, when I started writing the book last year, things were bad, of course, and come to a bad pass. But there was kind of an expectation, you know, fast forward to late 2010, that things might have improved, might have progressed a little bit. Well, it didn't quite turn out that way. Nevertheless, as I was writing the book, I imagined that as we put the kind of short-term uncertainties behind us, that we need to think about the future. And I think that's true nevertheless. I think that we need to put behind us the bad things that have happened. Of course, we have to deal with the consequences. But we need to switch more towards looking ahead, towards a path of recovery. Of course, it hasn't happened yet. It will take time. The short term seems to keep postponing the long term. But I am hopeful. This is my fourth recession since I set up business. And you know what? All recessions end in recovery, and so will this one. But I wasn't just thinking about the future as I was writing the book and kind of taking each paragraph of the original proclamation as a cue for a reflection or meditation on what it meant for Ireland today and in the future. I also got to know a great deal more about the past itself. I had to obviously understand the circumstances, the motivations of the 1916 rebels, what motivated them to occupy the GPO back in April 1916, and to better understand the meaning of the words that they used when they chose when they wrote the proclamation. And that was an interesting exercise. Although the original proclamation was just over 500 words long, I managed to spin it out to nearly 50,000 words in terms of thinking about what it all meant for the future and the ideas in it. Nevertheless, looking back then and better understanding where they were coming from, I realized that things were pretty bad back then. We think they're bad now. But April 1916, to remind you, was less than halfway through the First World War, which saw 10 million people die across Europe. Some 35,000 Irishmen included in that. Saw 4 empires disappear within a 4-year period, and the first communist country, Soviet Union, established. You look back then and you look at the dire poverty. A quarter of the children born within a stone's throw of this building in 1916 were dead before the age of 5. You look at the inequality, not just in income, but between men and women back then as well. And what you realize as you reflect on the times that were in it in 1916, that we are starting from a far, far better place in terms of how we respond to the challenges that are ahead of us. Another thing that struck me as I was writing the book was that I also got a better, not only did I get a better understanding of the circumstances of the 1916 rebels, led as it happened by a Dungannon man, Tom Clark, but I got to understand more of my own family history. My grandfather, my father's father, John Joseph O'Neill, was in the Royal Enniskilling Fusiliers and fought in the Somme, the Battle of the Somme, only a few months after the Easter Rising, along with 17,000 other Ulster Catholics, I might add. Facts tend to get written out of some narratives about Ulster's involvement in the Somme and in the First World War. He was wounded at the battle. Luckily for my father, consequently for me, he survived. Came back, in fact, with a couple of medals from King George, and then promptly joined the IRA and fought in the War of Independence, and got another set of medals. By the tender age of 22, he had fought in 2 wars, collected 5 medals, and earned 2 pensions, as it turns out, on his retirement. But anyway, what struck me then as well was that the bravery of the young Irishmen at the time was extraordinary, whether it was here in the GPO or whether it was in the trenches in France. And whilst we face fearful uncertainty as a nation right now, put yourselves in the boots of those in this building or on the Western Front in spring and summer 1916. They faced greater danger and uncertainty than we have and that we face now, and that hopefully we will ever face. And yet the Ireland they bequeathed is an infinitely better place than it was back then, and I might also add an infinitely more peaceful place as well. There's no doubt that the words of the proclamation, those few short words as they were read by peers outside this building just after noon on Easter Monday, April the 24th, 1916, have inspired millions down through the decades. And we should continue to draw on them for inspiration. Words that, the beginning of Irish men and Irish women in the name of God and of the dead generation. That deep connection with our past. Words like, she now seizes that moment. Recognizing the importance of timing of time and of events in changing the course of history. We declare the right of the people of Ireland to the ownership of Ireland. There are a few bondholders that might disagree with that right now. They spoke about the exaltation of Ireland among the nations, and we should hold our head high in terms of what we have achieved. And perhaps most memorably, the Republic guarantees religious and civil liberty, equal rights and equal opportunity to all its citizens and declares its resolve to pursue the happiness and prosperity of the whole nation and all its parts, cherishing all of the children of the nation equally. And they were, as I said, aware of timing. They talked about this supreme hour. And we're in a supreme hour right now, today, in this country, in terms of what we must do. And they referred to the august destiny which we're told we need to shape our destiny. So, as I was reflecting on where they were coming from, I recognized that they did something extraordinary. They did it, by the way, without any economists, an appalling situation. There were no economists behind the 1916 proclamation. They had no forecast or 5-year plans or budget deficit projections. They didn't even have surveys or focus groups to help them. But yet, they understood the power of words. That's what a proclamation is, after all. The power of words to help us imagine a better future, to feel confident about achieving it, and to guide us as how best to do so. So I guess in writing the book, 2016, A New Proclamation for a New Generation, I felt that we needed to believe again in our future as a nation, to use the extraordinary strengths that we have now today in 2010 as we look ahead to 2016, and to help shape a better future and a better august destiny. Our economy, yes, it's taken a huge hammering. It's back to where it was in 2003, 2004 in size. It's not back to 1903, 1904. Demography, people are still having lots of babies. We're the only country in Europe with a growing population at the moment. That's a big vote of confidence in the future. Our identity, our Irishness, our sense of belonging, we are a nation of joiners, of belongers, and I think that will continue to bind us together. Even the size of our economy, as a small country, we can be flexible, we can be adaptable. We've done it before and we can do it again. And our values. I talked about the 3 C's in the book of commerce and creativity and compassion that really play on the strength of the Irish people. So I guess what I'm saying is that we need to be brave about change. We need to dare to hope about the future. We need to recognize the need for change and even how we govern ourselves, regionally, not just nationally, how we govern ourselves in terms of the new set of relations on this island, peacefully and together. And we need to be open to the world. What we need to do is avoid turning in, feeling sorry for ourselves. We should be perhaps also inspired less by the dead generations, while at the same time honouring their memories, but actually think more about future generations and what we're going to do next and our legacy to the future. So I guess these are some of the thoughts and ideas that I've addressed in my book. I hope you'll agree that it is a message of hope. I think it's an optimistic message. It's one that we need on the day of Synod. I hope you'll be inspired by the book as well, and I hope even you'll do your bit and play your part in achieving our august destiny. So thank you very much for coming along with us.